Oh boy. All right. I don't know why I do this to myself. You guys seem to love these types of videos. I'm going to be honest with you. These are some of my least favorite to do. And the reason is this is 100% opinion. This is an argument channel. This is a college football sort of trash talk channel most of the time. And this video is 100% opinion. So it's really hard to argue points based off facts when you're talking about ranking teams in a poll. The AP puts a poll out every week. I see thousands of people crying that the AP poll doesn't know what they're talking about. Same with the coaches poll. Same with the playoff poll. ESPN, Sports Illustrated, Athlon, Phil Steele, USA Today, on and on and on and on. It doesn't matter. Unless the poll that's put out is exactly like the poll you individually would put out yourself, it's a terrible poll, and whoever made it doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Believe me, I've been doing this a long time. I know the routine and I know how it works. But you guys seem to like these videos, so I'm gonna do one. I do this every year. I do basically 3 preseason polls. I don't do polls every week or anything like that in the preseason. It's ridiculous. I do a poll after signing day, which of course was over a week ago now. Then I do another poll after spring games are played. Then I do my final preseason poll a month or so before the season starts, once we know who all's got kicked off the team over the summer for getting arrested or God knows whatever else. So I do 3 preseason polls. This is the first one. So this is going to be my first 2020 way too early top 10 poll. Let's go. Hey, good morning, Annette. Guess what? It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Also, in addition to that as well, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year. And believe it or not, some of them are watchable. This one will be watchable if you agree with where I rank the teams, your team in particular. If I rank your team exactly where you think they should be ranked, you'll love this video. I'll be a genius. I'll be a good guy. If I rank your team too low and you think they should be higher, then I'm an idiot who's never seen a football game, doesn't know what he's talking about, and should probably just delete my channel. Believe me, this isn't my first rodeo, but please, by all means, feel free to hit me up with the type in the comments section down below. I really look forward to reading them. All right, here we go. Before I put my poll up, I'm going to put 3 other polls up that I found on the internet in researching this video. I'm not saying these polls are right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just putting them up as a reference point so you guys have a general idea of how some other major publications feel about the teams heading into 2020. So here's ESPN. You can pause the video if you need to look at it longer. All right, here's the top 25 put out by Athlon Sports. And finally, I found this one from Sports Illustrated. Here it is. All right, all 3 of these polls were put out post-signing day, so within the last week, right? Now, the point of me putting these polls up is not to tell you, like I said, that they're right or wrong. I'm not copying any of these polls. It's not like I looked at these three polls and then tried to figure out which one I liked the most and just go with that. This is just a reference point so you guys have an understanding of where some other people are viewing some teams heading into 2020. I also put it up for another reason. If I rank some particular team number 7, and you get in the comment section and tell me I'm an idiot, this team ain't got no business being 7, they should be 17 or 27, or they should be 1 or 2. I'm an idiot, I don't know what I'm talking about. And I look over these 3 polls and I see that team that I named sitting somewhere in or around the 7 spot. Well, then you got a whole lot of crying to do, and I would expect you to track these people down and let them know how much your feelings are hurt too. So that's just a reference point. What do I use to try to do my initial post signing day 2020 poll? Well, to say you don't use what happened last season is just ridiculous. Everyone clearly uses what happened last season, even if it's just a little bit. We'll use Alabama as an example. Okay, Alabama had what for them was a down year. They finished ranked, 8th or 9th, something like that. 11-2, I think they went. Didn't win the division, but did win a bowl game, missing out on the playoffs for the first time in a while. Finished 8th or 9th. Alabama's still one of the most talented teams in America. People, they're not going to be ranked 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, something like that in any preseason poll. It's just not going to happen. Look at their recruiting classes. And I'm not talking about just the 2020 class. Clearly that helps. Teams play a lot of freshmen these days. So, the old days where a recruiting class didn't benefit you at all until a year or two down the road, those days are gone. The elite teams recruiting in the top 10 are all signing 5-star players who are going to have impacts right away. So yes, the 2020 class matters, and Alabama had a great 2020 class, but it's more than that. It's the last 3 or 4 classes that really define a team's roster right now. And that's why I look at 24/7's Team Talent Composite Index. I'm not here to tell you it's the best thing on earth, but basically what they do is they take a team's last 4 recruiting classes, they sort of average them out, and they rank them in terms of total talent. They take transfers into account, kids that get kicked out of school, kids that go to the NFL early, they take all that into account. So it's basically how talented is a roster right now based on the last 4 recruiting cycles. And I'm going to put the 24/7 Team Talent Composite Index up on the screen now, and you can take a look at it. But again, these are an average score, basically how well a team has recruited over the last 4 years. You're going to see a lot of familiar schools here in the top 10. Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3. Clearly, those teams have recruited at a ridiculous level over the last 3 or 4 years, so it's not a surprise to me to see those teams in the top 3 in a total talent index like this. It's also not a surprise to me that those are 3 of the teams that finish in the top 10 almost every single year in the last 3 or 4 years. Because again, that's what this talent index is ranking, the last 4 recruiting cycles. Number 4, you have Southern Cal. There's a reason people look at Southern Cal as a disappointment when they go 8-4. And it's because they have the 4th most talented roster according to the last 4 recruiting classes. You see LSU at 5, coming off a national title. You see FSU at 6. They fall into the Southern Cal department of being underwhelming. Same with Texas at 7. They've really only had 1 good year, but have several good recruiting classes. OU is 8. They make the playoffs every year. Clemson 9th, probably the best program in football right now. Penn State 10, Michigan 11, Texas A&M 12, Auburn 13, Notre Dame 14, Florida 15. So my point is, you don't see Vandy in here, okay? You don't see Oklahoma State in here. You don't even see Wisconsin in here. You don't see South Carolina in here, okay? You don't see UCLA or Cal or Oregon State or Rutgers or any of these other teams that tend to have bad records at the end of the year and finish outside of the top 10, top 15, top 25. Why? Because recruiting matters. Stop kidding yourself. This is the talent index. No surprise to me that at the end of every single year, the top 25 looks a lot like the top 25 talent index. So here's my top 10. We're going to put it up right over here. I'm going to do it the same way I do my polls during the season. I'll start at number 10. I'll go down to 1. I'll try to do a fairly decent job of explaining why I have certain teams where I do. Before we start, I'm going to rattle off a list of teams that is not in my top 10, but that I considered putting into the top 10. These are in no particular order. These are just teams I think are really good. And if somebody wanted to put one of these teams in their top 10 somewhere, I think an argument could be made for that. Wisconsin, Texas A&M, Auburn, Michigan, Minnesota, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, and Texas. Those are the teams I had missing out on the top 10. Again, those are in no particular order. Those are just teams I consider that didn't quite make the top 10. All right, here we go. We're going to kick things off with number 10, and it is Notre Dame. I don't like Notre Dame either. I know, I hate Notre Dame, not in the conference. They don't play nobody. Nobody plays nobody on this channel, okay? Get with the program here. This isn't breaking news, fake news, or alternative facts. Nobody plays nobody. Just read the comments. But Notre Dame, over the last couple of years, has been a pretty good team. They made the playoffs 2 years ago. They went 10-2 last year. Their 2 losses were to the 2 teams they played that were really good, Georgia and Michigan. Here you go with the Michigan ain't no good. Okay, they're top 15 team. There's 130 teams. To me, if you're in the top 15, you're pretty good. They lost at Georgia, lost at Michigan, beat everybody else they played, finished 10-2. Year before, made the playoffs. Yeah, lost round 1, but made the playoffs. I've got them at number 10. They got a lot of pieces coming back. I think they have a favorable schedule again, although they do have to play Clemson this year, which, that's going to be a hell of a game. And that's late in the year, too. So we could get treated to like a potentially a top 5 matchup if both teams are undefeated that late into the season when that comes around. But in any case, it'll be a really good game. So, yeah, they play Clemson or whatever. So they're going to have to prove this top 10 rating. But I think it's fair to put them at number 10 in the initial post-signing day poll. At number 9, I have Oklahoma. A lot of people have them a little bit higher. I'm off the Oklahoma bandwagon if I was ever even on it. Eventually, they're not going to make the playoffs. To be honest, I think they should be banned from the playoffs for a couple of years until they get a defense that can rank in the top 30 or so. People are just tired of seeing Oklahoma blow through the Big 12 like it's not even there and then show up in the playoffs and get humiliated in the first round. And that's just what happens every single year. Until Oklahoma makes a solid commitment to play football on the defensive side, we're going to continue to see a lot of the same results. Baker Mayfield gone, Kyler Murray gone, Jalen Hurts gone. All 3 of those QBs took Oklahoma to the playoffs and lost in round 1. They're finally going to have to play a quarterback this year that they actually recruited out of high school themselves. It looks like that's going to be Spencer Rattler. Now, he's got all the talent in the world. He was highly recruited out of high school, but he's never done anything in college. That hasn't been the case with their last 3 quarterbacks who all transferred into Oklahoma after playing other places or at least being on the team at other places. I think Oklahoma's going to take a step back this year. They lose some talent on offense too. I wasn't overly impressed with their offensive line last year, and their defense, although a little bit better than previous years, is still light years away from where it needs to be. I think Oklahoma's probably the cream of the crop in the Big 12, depending on how good Texas can be. I think there's a couple of other teams in the Big 12 that are taking steps forward, but I'm not sure they've taken enough steps forward to threaten to win the Big 12. It's Oklahoma's to lose at this point. I have them at number 9 in this post-signing day poll. And that brings me to number 8, LSU. This is nothing personal against LSU. I was on the LSU train about halfway through the season. I started to really realize how good they were. It took me a little bit longer to come around to them defensively, but for good reason. They were giving up a lot of points and yards to some bad teams. But by the end of the year, their defense was playing well. Their offense, one of the best we've seen in a long, long time, probably better even than Oklahoma's offenses the couple of years prior. But they lose a ton of pieces off of that offense. And what's an even bigger concern to me is not necessarily losing Joe Burrow, although that is huge, and there was no way they were going to duplicate in 2020 what Joe Burrow did in 2019. Losing Joe Brady is, I think, a hurdle they're not going to be able to get over. At least they're going to have to prove to me that they can before I fully buy in to LSU being a top 4 team again next year. Joe Brady was only in LSU for 1 year. And he completely revamped that offense in one offseason, which was amazing. I'm just not convinced that one offseason was enough time to permanently instill the things into that offense that need to be instilled into that offense to continue offensively like they did in 2019. They're going to play a quarterback who's never played before. They're losing a couple of their best players on defense. Now, again, we looked at the team talent index. They recruit ridiculous every single year. They're the 5th most talented team in America, according to 24/7. But if they take too many steps backward defensively because they're in that division with Alabama, I think it's going to be hard for them to come out of there. And you got to remember, we clown Alabama around here because it's fun to do. They gave LSU their best game last year. That was like a 45-41 type game. LSU pretty much blew out everyone else they played with the exception of Texas way back in week 1, which was just a weird game. I've got LSU at 8. I know that's going to upset some of the LSU fans. I'm honestly not intending it to do that. I just, Oklahoma has the plug-and-play system, it seems like, offensively, because they've had Lincoln Riley there for year after year after year. Even before he was head coach, he was running the offense there. So that system is instilled and ingrained in every player almost the minute they step foot on campus at Oklahoma. So it seems like they're able to just pick any quarterback up off the street or the transfer portal or whatever and plug them in there, and the numbers are almost identical to whoever was there the year before. I'm just not sure 1 year of that offense we saw at LSU is enough to duplicate that at LSU. So again, I'm a let me see it before I fully believe it type of guy when it comes to LSU. I still think they're really, really good. I still think they're the best bet in the West to beat Alabama, if anyone is going to beat them out of the West. But in the post-signing day poll, I've got them coming in at number 8. That takes us to number 7, and this is going to be our first and only Pac-12 team, Oregon, number 7. Oregon, to me, is a very dangerous and scary, scary team. What Mario Cristobal is building out there in Oregon is freakish. He's recruiting so far ahead of the rest of the Pac-12, it's not even funny. And I think he's a really good coach on top of that. Now, he's come up a game short last year, particularly dropping that game to Arizona State, was it? Late in the season, cost them a spot in the playoffs. They're recruiting at a ridiculous level, though. They're going to be really good again this year. They've got a huge game. I think it's week 2. They host Ohio State. So we'll find out how close Oregon is to being an elite contending team that week when they host the Buckeyes. But they're a talented team. I like their coach, and they play in a weak conference, the Pac-12. Southern Cal should be the big boy in that conference, but they're just absolutely horrible right now. I've got Oregon coming into my post-signing day poll at number 7. That takes us to number 6, another SEC team, Florida. I do think Florida's a dangerous team this year. Getting Kyle Trask back, he surprised a lot of people last year, including Florida fans. When Franks went down, we didn't know what we were going to get out of Kyle Trask. The guy had not started a football game since junior high school. He was a backup in high school. He only got a scholarship because he went to some camps and looked really good, so Florida offered him a scholarship. He had never started in high school and had never started at Florida until Felipe Franks went down in week 2 or 3, whatever it was, on the road at Kentucky. He comes in, leads Florida to a comeback from behind victory over Kentucky, and then they go on to finish 10-2 in the regular season with their only 2 losses being to 2 top 5 teams, LSU and Georgia. They get a lot of pieces back on offense. They're crazy good at wide receiver. They lose some things on defense, but to my surprise, really, they've been able to sort of reload on defense over the last few years. Now, Florida is a team that I don't think is recruiting at the level they need to, especially considering the state that they're in. Overall, they're doing okay. They're hovering around 10-ish in recruiting right now, but that still puts them 6th or 7th in the SEC. So my concern with Florida is depth, really, late in the season. I think they're good enough to compete with LSU and Georgia, which are 2 teams they play every single year. Of course, they have Florida State at the end of the year, but Florida State has been down. There are some people that have Florida ranked higher than 6, and that makes sense to me. And there are going to be some people, I think, this summer during media days that pick Florida to win the SEC East. I don't think that's a crazy prediction either. I think everyone's going to pick either Georgia or Florida, and I won't be surprised at all if a lot of people pick Florida. It's sort of like when you play roulette and the thing keeps landing on red over and over and over and over and over again. You start thinking in your mind, well, eventually it's got to land on black. Georgia has won the SEC East 3 years in a row. The only other team that's ever done that is Florida. They won the East 4 times in a row back in the 90s, and they actually won the national championship the 4th year that they won the East. That'll be Georgia's goal this year, but hell, that's their goal every year, and they find a way to blow it. But I digress, though. I've got Florida 6. I'm not downing Florida by having them 6. I've seen them lower in some polls. I've seen them higher in some polls. Anywhere I think between 4 and 8 for Florida, I think is fair. They're a really good team. They finished in the top 10 2 years in a row now. They got Dan Mullen down there. We'll see how they do. It's going to come down, I think, to that Georgia game for them. Again, LSU will be tough too. But anyway, I've got Florida in my post-signing day poll at number 6. That takes us into the top 5 now. And kicking things off from the Big Ten, I have Penn State. I will admit I am higher on Penn State than most other people. Part of it is because I want to be right. And if you guys were around here last offseason, every time I talked about Penn State heading into the 2019 season, last season, I said the same thing. I said, I like their coach. I think they've got some good pieces there, but I think they're about a year away. I kept referring to 2019 as not a rebuilding year, but a transition year for Penn State. And they actually ended up being a lot better last year even than I thought they would. They were contending for that Big Ten title late into the season. Of course, they did lose to Ohio State, and that sort of cost them a spot in the Big Ten title game. But they get a lot of pieces back, too. Micah Parsons on defense is unbelievable. If you don't know who he is, you will this season for sure. I like their running back. I like their quarterback situation. And again, I am a big James Franklin fan. If you guys, I mean, what he did at Vanderbilt is probably one of the greatest coaching jobs in history. But to get Vanderbilt to 9 and 10 wins is literally next to impossible. And he did it. And he's got Penn State headed in the right direction, in my opinion. Will this be the year that someone dethrones Ohio State? And if they do, will it be Penn State? I think Penn State is the team that is waiting for Ohio State to stumble. I've got them at number 5 in this first poll of 2020. Top 4, I've got Georgia at 4. Yes, I'm a Georgia fan. You can tell me I'm an idiot. I only have them at 4 because I'm a moron. Of course, Sports Illustrated has them at 2. ESPN, I think, had them at 6. I forget where. I think Athlon might have had them at 8. But every poll you look at, there's somewhere between 2 and 8. I've got them at 4. Clearly, they got question marks at the quarterback position. They lose 3-year starter Jake Fromm, right? Dwan Mathis, he has some health issues. He may or may not be cleared to play this year after having to sit out all of last year. Carson Beck comes in as a true freshman, one of the top 10 or so quarterback prospects in the 2020 class, depending on which ranking list you look at. And of course, they bring in a grad transfer from Wake Forest, Jamie Newman. I don't think Jamie Newman is the next coming to Cam Newton or Tim Tebow or anything like that, but he is a dynamic playmaker who can get things done with his legs and his arm. Georgia's looking to, in my opinion, fingers crossed, completely revamp their offense this offseason. I don't think it's going to be to the extent that we saw LSU do it with just almost like a total spread air raid type offense. Georgia's got too many running backs to sort of just put all their chips into the spread basket. I think you're still going to see Georgia pound the rock. When Georgia does throw the ball, though, I expect a lot more complicated formations, routes, route trees, play designs, things like that. I think Georgia's passing game is going to take a big step forward in 2020. Will it be Jamie Newman? Will it be Dwan Mathis? Will it be Carson Beck? I'm not sure. One thing I truly believe this. I'm willing to almost bet that Georgia will have more total yards from the quarterback position in 2020 than they had in any of the 3 years that Jake Fromm started. I think some of that is going to be because we have a quarterback that can utilize his legs. Jake Fromm couldn't run at all. He finished his career at Georgia with negative yards rushing. That's hard to do in modern football. So I think Georgia's passing game is going to improve. I think whoever plays quarterback will have more total yards this year than Fromm ever had in any of his 3 seasons. Georgia's defense gets almost everybody back from what was probably the best defense in college football last year. They're going to be a really good team. Of course, they got a difficult schedule. They play on the road at Alabama. They got to play Florida in Jacksonville. Got to play South Carolina in Columbia. And they beat you last year, Lou. Yeah, remind me again. Got to play Tennessee in Athens. So we'll see if we can get through Auburn. We get them at home this year. That helps. So a tough schedule. I think 4 is fair for Georgia in the preseason. They finished last year ranked 4th, right? Yeah, finished last year ranked 4th. I have them 4th following signing day. They had the number 1 class in America. Several of those guys they signed are going to contribute right away. I've got Georgia at 4. Top 3. Number 3, I have Ohio State. They get Justin Fields back. They lose Dobbins. They got Master Teague there. Plus, they recruited an insane level. They've got NFL wide receivers. They've got NFL defensive players. They lose Chase Young. But look, Ohio State's loaded. They're loaded at DB. They got playmakers on all 3 levels on defense. They'll find a running back. Master Teague may or may not be the guy. If not, someone will be the guy. Justin Fields, you would think he would improve from year 1 to year 2. Technically it's year 2 to year 3, but last year was the only year he really ever played because what we did to him was criminal. But anyway, and he was just insane numbers last year, like 45 touchdowns. What do you have? 2 or 3 interceptions, something like that. Just ridiculous numbers, 70% completion percentage. So you would think he would be even better again. He's a Heisman favorite heading into the season. Ohio State, very high in every poll, no matter where you look. I've got them at number 3 in my post-signing day poll. Top 2, I've got Alabama 2 and Clemson 1. Clemson gets Trevor Lawrence back. We knew that. What really did it for me in putting Clemson 1 here was them getting Travis Etienne back. I did not see that coming. I think it's possible Travis Etienne would have been the first running back taken in the draft had he decided to come out. I know Swift is available, Jonathan Taylor. There's a couple of other guys. I think Travis Etienne possibly could have been the first running back taken and definitely a first-round pick. Him coming back to Clemson, to me, is what sold me on putting Clemson 1 here over Alabama heading into 2020. We know about Trevor Lawrence. They lose T. Higgins, but they still have Justin Ross. They have the Amari Rodgers. So they're loaded. Their weapons on offense are ridiculous. And after losing all those defensive linemen 2 years ago and still being as good as they were this past season on the defensive line, I'm done questioning them on defense. They have done what they've done, recruiting in the teens. This was really the first year Clemson's recruiting class was elite. I mean, they were number 1 for almost the entire cycle. Georgia and Alabama caught them at the end, but they still finished with the 3rd recruiting class, which was the best class by far that they've had under Dabo Swinney. So if you think about how good Clemson has been, and then you think about the fact that according to 24/7, they have the 9th best roster, how good are they going to be if they keep recruiting like they did this past year and they end up with the 2nd, 3rd, 1st best roster? Clemson is a scary, scary team and a scary, scary program. Dabo's definitely got them on the top of the mountain right now, in my opinion. I know LSU is the reigning champs. All credit to them. But when you look at which program right now is set up the best, it's Clemson. They passed Alabama, in my opinion, 2 years ago when they beat them. And Alabama didn't do anything last year to reclaim it. Clemson at least made the title game again. I think they deserve to be number 1. That leaves Alabama at number 2. I have quarterback concerns with Alabama like everybody else does. Are they going to go with Mac Jones, which I think would be sort of the more conservative approach? Or will Saban roll the dice and go with the young guy, Bryce Young, out of California? I think he clearly has a higher ceiling and more potential than Mac Jones. But Nick Saban, when it gets down to it, he's still a defensive, conservative-minded coach. He pulled the trigger halftime of the national title game a couple of years ago, benching Hurts and putting the freshman in, Tua. Will he make that decision a lot sooner this time around, seeing how well it worked out when he did it with Tua in the title game back a few seasons ago? I think he probably will. I think Mac Jones will play, especially early in the season, but I don't think anybody, myself included, will be surprised if Bryce Young is the starting quarterback at Alabama at some point in the season, whether that's week 1, week 3, week 5, whenever it is. I expect him to take over that starting quarterback position at some point. Alabama's Achilles heel last year, other than Tua's injury issues, was its defense. They're going to benefit from that this year. They played a ton of freshmen and young players on defense last year, and that was probably the worst Alabama defense we've seen since Saban's first year in Tuscaloosa. It was honestly weird to watch Alabama's defense play as bad as it did last year. I don't expect that to happen 2 years in a row. I think Alabama's defense will be much better in 2020 than it was in 2019, and I think whether or not Alabama can get back to the mountaintop and win another title is going to depend on how quickly that quarterback position comes around. We'll see. But there it is. That's the top 10 poll. I can't wait to read the comments. Again, I don't expect anybody to agree with me. Now, I'm not here to tell you that this poll is right and everyone else's is wrong. This is just my opinion. This will change, I'm sure, by the time the spring games are played and I get ready to make my 2nd preseason poll a couple of months from now. But this is it. This is how it stands for now. All right. I appreciate you guys watching. Have a good morning.